Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Soulful Hunter podcast. I am your host, Johnny Mack. Through this podcast, I am on a mission to transform lives through primal adventure and to spread my mission of mentorship is conservation. This podcast is powered by Washington Backcountry, a resource for all hunters new and old. To find out more about Washington Backcountry, go to wabackcountry.com or search for Washington Backcountry on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Soulful Hunter podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mack. We got a wonderful show for you today dedicated around mentorship and specifically hunting 101 when it comes to waterfowl hunting. That's something that I've never done and something I've been looking forward to getting into. And our today's guest is quite the waterfowl hunter. His name is Tommy Sandoz. And we're going to introduce you and go ahead and just create the discussion about what it is to waterfowl, how to go about it, and everything included with that. So welcome, Tommy. Thanks for being on the show today.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. So go ahead and tell everyone a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you do, and all that.
Yeah, I grew up here in Stanwood, Washington, north of Seattle. Kind of grew up being outdoors with my dad. He was taking me pheasant hunting since I was probably 5. Could walk, I'd walk around with the Red Ryder, be out there with the boys. And I got my hunter safety when I was probably 10, and we started upland game hunting a little bit. And then we kind of got into the duck hunting. And when we got into that, man, it was just, I was done for. That was all I wanted to do for the last probably 15 years of my life. That's all I can think about. So I've just traveled all over doing it and done it a ton here, and it's been good to me.
So you actually started out being a big game hunter?
No, I started pheasant hunting. I'm just kind of now getting into the big game more.
Okay, so I know that you just said that you were a pheasant hunter. So your father introduced you into waterfowl, and then you've progressed from there?
Right, yeah. He's always been a bird hunter, whether it's pheasant, quail, ducks, geese. I mean, he's always done that. He's never been a big game hunter, so that's just kind of what I grew up with. And for me, duck hunting was what I really enjoyed versus like the upland game stuff is fun, but it didn't light a fire like waterfowl did.
Gotcha. So what is it about waterfowl that just absolutely captivated you?
I think watching the birds work the decoys, and when they finally just give it up and you fooled them, there's something about it that I've never been able to match that with anything else.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Did you always have a dog growing up?
We had a lab, and so my dad was more into the pheasant hunting stuff, so we had her trained really well for that. So she was kind of a little too hyper to be in the duck blind. I mean, we would take her, and it was almost just frustrating because she was so go, go, go. So we kind of just went on hunting without her a lot of the time, or if we were going to go jump shooting before a baseball game on a Sunday or something, we'd take the dog and just go jump some ditches, but she didn't like sitting in the blind too much.
I love it. Now explain to me what you mean by jumping ditches. So I personally, an absolute rookie, never experienced waterfowl hunting. So some of these terms that I'm unfamiliar with, some of our listeners might be as well. So take us through some of this stuff.
Yeah, so like jumping ditches, if you just have a morning to kill, you go out to, say you have a farm you like to hunt, or there's like a piece of public land with just like little sloughs and stuff. There'll be sometimes a couple ducks sitting on every corner here and there. You kind of just walk the ditch, go for a walk with your gun basically, and try and sneak up on the ditch. And if you jump up a couple ducks, you shoot them. If you don't, you had a good walk.
Okay, I love it. So it has a little bit of a feel to the upland bird.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's a good little crossover. So take us through waterfowl hunting 101 and everything. Gear needed. Let's start with the gear. What type of gear do you need to be able to waterfowl hunt?
It's tough because there's so many different ways to hunt waterfowl, but I think some gear you 100% need is a pair of chest waders, a pair of good chest waders, because no one likes a leaky boot when it's 20 degrees out and snowing. And
right.
You need rain gear. I'm a big fan of rain gear. I don't like getting wet. I know I grew up in Washington and it always rains, but I don't like getting wet. So rain gear, your good shotgun, obviously, and decoys. I mean, there's tons of arguments on decoys. If you need 1,000 decoys, if you need 10 decoys, it's super situational based on how many decoys you need and what kind of decoys. That's the problem with waterfowl hunting is there's a ton of gear, and if you really want to be a successful waterfowl hunter, you're going to need a lot of it.
Okay. I know a buddy of mine who lives out in North Dakota. He actually has a dedicated trailer for all his waterfowl gear.
Yep, I got a 14-foot cargo trailer sitting right next to my house with way too much money and decoys and layout blinds and all sorts of stuff in there.
So that's quite the investment that you have there. But if you are going to start out waterfowl hunting, what are the necessities that you need to get away with being successful, or just being able to get out and get a couple birds?
I'd say you need a pair of waders, your raincoat, your shotgun, and a dozen floater mallard decoys, and
Okay.
you can go kill a couple ducks.
Cool. And
Without
so
a
is
doubt.
it pretty much just like any random pond in a field or standing water, or how is it that you go about finding waterfowl?
So for me, scouting's huge. I grew up hunting. When I first started, we hunted the bay a lot, the Skagit Bay, and we would just go to a public access spot and we just go hike out, check the tides, hike out when it was coming in and find a patch of cattails to hunker down in, and the tide will come up and you have a kind of a pond set up in front of you, but you only get so long to hunt it because of the tide. And so you just throw out a couple dozen decoys and hunker down and hopefully shoot a few birds. And we usually did, and it was fun. And I kind of just started watching videos and reading about it and seeing how people do it all over the rest of the country. And then I really got into hunting fields after that, which is a whole nother set of gear and all that. But that's when I started really having good success with numbers. And
So
that was a game changer.
Yeah, when you're hunting fields, is that more geese or is that still duck?
I mean, totally depends. I love hunting ducks in a dry field. I've shot ducks in a cornfield in the first week of the season, in the middle of October. It was been 70 degrees out, and we're shooting mallard ducks over dry corn, no water anywhere. It's just you got to find where they're feeding, and if they're feeding there and you get in there and get hid well, you'll kill ducks.
Interesting. Now, does that have anything to do with calling or just the fact that they're coming to that corn?
I think calling plays a part, but I'm a strong believer that if you're on, so in waterfowl they call it the X. If you're on the X, you're going to kill birds. The X is where the birds have been, where they want to go, where they want to be. If you are set up right there and you are hidden well, you don't need a call in the most of the time. Granted, I do and my buddies do, but if you have your decoys out right where the ducks want to be, you don't need a call to kill them.
It's like having an open door and just saying, come on in. The
Yep.
party's already started.
Yep. I'm a strong believer 100% that the most important thing is your concealment.
Okay. So I've heard a lot about if you don't call properly for ducks or geese that you're going to scare them away. Is that something that you've experienced?
Yeah, absolutely. I think people, with geese, it's huge. I think people overcall geese big time, and a goose call is harder to blow than a duck call. So if you're not a good goose caller, it's definitely easier to make them a little wary, and they're not going to want to come hang out if you're screaming at them. And I think a lot of people get that confused because they see videos and guys are just hammering on their call. Well, those guys making the videos are call makers, so they're trying to promote their products, and they're professionals. They know when and when not to call. But I think that can be a big factor for someone that's getting into it is you don't want to call when you don't need to. If you don't have to call, don't call.
Gotcha. That's great advice. So tell me, are you only calling when you see the birds in the air flying, or is it you're calling regardless and hoping that you'll bring something to you?
Yeah, no, I won't call unless I see birds in the air, and they have to be somewhat close. I mean, you'll see birds a mile out and they're on a path over, they're going somewhere else. I don't waste my breath. You're not going to turn them realistically. They probably can't hear you. They already know where they're going. If birds are in the low, pretty close to where you're at, you start calling, and I think that can definitely be productive and definitely help you out. But it's just there's definitely times when you don't need a call, and if they're not close, I don't think it's productive at all.
If someone didn't have a dog or or a call, could they still go out and waterfowl hunt?
Absolutely. I mean, I have a 3-year-old lab, and she's an awesome dog, and she does. I go hunting without her all the time.
How do you work that?
Uh, I For me, it's easier to hunt without a dog. I didn't take the time. Hunting with a dog can be very frustrating if you don't have a very well trained dog, which takes a ton of time that I didn't put into my dog. So she's more of my little homegirl that hangs out at the house, and I go duck hunting. You don't need them. I don't think you need a dog to find birds when you shoot them. Sometimes a dog would help, but for the most part, if you shoot them and if you get a good mark on where they land, you can find them pretty easy.
Okay, that's good to know. Have you ever gone out by yourself with no other hunting partners when you're doing it without a dog?
Oh yeah, lots of times.
Okay, does it help to have a spotter?
It depends. Usually, if there's a few of you and it's a flock of birds that come in, everyone's shooting their own birds, so no one really saw where your bird landed. So it's kind of every man for himself, you know. But if you're out there with 3 buddies and a single mallard comes in, obviously only one guy is going to shoot, I think, and that'll help you out. Like I've definitely had times where we've shot a bird and I'm out a couple 100 yards out from the blind and my buddy's pointing. He's like, "No, over this way," and that definitely does help you out.
Yeah. So now that you're talking about your buddies and all that, take us through what it's like to be hunting with a group of people in a blind, and is public land versus private land an issue for waterfowl hunting, and how do you go about working that?
Public land can be very productive. I've had a lot of good hunts on public land, and I'll be the last person to say that, oh, I don't hunt public land, I only hunt private, because there's tons of good opportunities to kill tons of birds on public land. It can be a lot more frustrating, but the private land can be just as frustrating as the public. I've gotten pretty bad in the last few years. Like different groups of people that hunt in the same area will go talk to the same farmers and get the same permission, and then you show up at 3 in the morning and there's 2 other groups of guys, and now there's 15 of you, and it's just a big argument for no reason. So that can be pretty frustrating.
Yeah.
But public land, you can get out at midnight, set up in your pond, and you have your spot all staked out, and someone rolls in half an hour before shooting light and sets up 200 yards from you. And as frustrated as you are, you can't really say much because it's public land. It's rude, and that's not the sportsmanlike thing to do on their part, but they're not breaking a law.
So can duck hunting or waterfowl hunting be a little bit like combat fishing?
Absolutely.
So if you're sitting on a good hole, you're going to be rubbing elbows with some other people.
Yep, especially on the weekends, man. And there's some good public spots that people know about, and they know they can be awesome spots to kill birds. And there'll be people out at the boat launch at 10 o'clock in the night before, going out there, sleeping out there, and then it's gotten really bad. So that's definitely, if you have a piece of private property that no one else can hunt, that's definitely appealing, because you can sleep in and you don't have to fight or worry about someone else being there. So that's a huge perk to that.
Yeah. Is getting access on private land easier for waterfowl versus, like when you ask to hunt for deer on someone's land, more times they look at them like pets, or they're like, no, we love looking at the wildlife. Do people care much about waterfowl?
They do. I'd say it's about the same in my experience, asking, because I've hunted some private property for deer before, and I get a lot of no's when I'm knocking on doors for waterfowl hunting. A lot of it is, oh, my brother-in-law hunts this, or my cousin, he likes to hunt this every now and then, so we don't let anyone else hunt, or so-and-so already asked, so they're hunting it. And now we're getting into the last few years, it's gotten really bad where, oh, no, so-and-so gave me 10 grand to not let anyone else hunt for the year, so they're leasing it. So it's kind of turning into that kind of deal. So it's frustrating, but there's still people that will let you hunt. You really got to put the miles in, and you got to knock on a lot of doors and get really good at hearing no.
Yeah.
And being okay with it.
I have a great story. My brother always told me when it came to asking out girls back when I was in high school and college. He's like, "Hey man, people are gonna tell you no. These girls are gonna tell you no." He goes, "Let's say you got a 30% chance that someone's gonna say yes. You ask out 10 girls, you got three that are gonna be going out with you. Ask 100, you got 30 girls, 30 dates." And so I always like to think about that when it comes to knocking on doors. Is that kind of a little bit of a motto or a theme in how it goes for you?
Oh yeah, I have my one hunting partner I hunt with the most. His name's Zach Anderson, and we've spent I don't know how many hours in the truck driving around in the summer looking for new property, and we'll pull up in the driveway. So look at each other. You want to get told no, or should I at this door? Like it's just kind of a joke, And then when we get a yes, we're, holy cow, we got one. So we're pretty good at hearing it. We don't mind hearing it, and you meet a lot of cool people. It's nice. Sometimes you'll have a 20-minute conversation with someone who turns out to be a really cool person. They still tell you no, but you don't regret talking to them. I mean, I've heard some pretty cool stories on
Yeah,
some random porch.
right. But at the same time, you're building a bridge and you're being an ambassador for the hunting community and you're setting a good example for how you carry yourself. And then you never know about coming back the next year.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a few places that I've wanted to hunt for the last 10 years, and I go there every single year, and they know me. They see me walking up the porch, and they say, nothing changed this year. All right, well, I had to try. And it just, you can't give up, man. If you want to kill birds, you got to go for it.
You got to be after it. So talk to us about getting permission. What's some of your strategies when it comes to getting private land permission?
I think the biggest thing is being courteous and being polite. I think people are more likely to give you permission if you come up and you're super polite. Me and my buddies will offer them fresh salmon or some pepperoni sticks from our birds from the year before if they want it, or hey man, if we can hunt your field this weekend, I don't know if you whiskey drinker, we can drop off a bottle of your favorite whiskey if you want, or just kind of throw out stuff like that. I mean, what reason do they have to let you hunt? So kind of help them, give them a reason, that you can.
That's great advice. And do you go to houses on certain times of the day or days of the week, or what's your method on that?
I try to be super careful about when I go because I don't want to wake someone up. I never knock on a door before like 10 in the morning unless I see someone out in their yard or something. I try not to go at dinner time. I've found afternoons are pretty good. It's kind of hard because some people are at work, but I just don't want to. I don't want to start off on the wrong foot and interrupt someone in the middle of dinner with their family and say, "Hey, man, can I go shoot those birds?" Like, no, man, I'm having dinner with my family. Get out of here. I don't want that situation. They don't want that situation, so I try to avoid it.
Yeah, it's kind of like treat people the way you want to be treated. Would you want to be interrupted at dinner?
Right. And if someone came up knocking on my door at 6 in the morning, like, "Hey, you got some geese out in your field? Can I go shoot them?" I said, "Absolutely not. Get off my porch. I'm trying to sleep, man. I'm gonna go shoot those things when I wake up."
Right. So when it comes to scouting, you were saying you drive around in summer, but waterfowl is in the fall and winter. So how do you go about scouting for waterfowl?
Well, the summer stuff's kind of just scouting out for property to hunt. I'm not looking for birds or anything. I'm just looking for fields that are the crops that I like to hunt, and we mark them all on our Onyx maps and have them all laid out, and then we kind of go down, we write down all the landowners, and we talk to them, and then we'll write down who said yes and who said no, so we know in the future, hey, we have permission for this for the year, and we'll have all their properties marked out because usually a landowner will own a chunk of land all over the county, so we can put pins on all his fields that we can hunt, so we know when it comes to a waterfowl season, we can drive around with our Onyx map, and we have all these red pins where we're allowed to hunt. And so if we see, we'll go look for birds, we know, okay, we already asked them, we can't hunt there. There's no point in wasting daylight trying to track them down. We already did,
So you have a little bit of a logbook that you keep.
Oh, yeah, it's absolutely crucial, I think, if you want to be productive about it.
Do birds return to the same field year after year?
It depends. They change the crops every year, so it's never going to be the same crop. Usually, if they do potatoes one year, they're probably going to do corn or winter wheat the next year, just because the soil, they can't do potatoes over and over because they'll just ruin the dirt. So you kind of have to there's the areas they hang out in, and you kind of see what crops they're going to be in, and you know what's going to be a waste of time, but you have a general idea of where they're going to be. And there's certain fields, like grass fields are a big one, that are just like green grass. Birds hit those same fields every year. If there's a grass field with birds in it, they'll be in there every year.
Yeah. So what are the crops that you're looking for?
I hunt a lot of corn and some winter wheat. A lot of that, like alfalfa grass or hay field, I don't know what it is, just green grass. Potato fields, the ducks stack up in potato fields. They are not fun to hunt at all. You sink up to your knees. They're a muddy mess. There's nothing to hide in, but I've hunted fields with 20,000 ducks in them, and you see 20,000 ducks in a field, you just can't say no. So I got to go for it.
Right. Well, that is some great information for all of these new hunters out there. When it comes to a gun, we talked about you need to have a shotgun. What type of shotgun's recommended? Can you get away with just a random 870? What gauge? What type of choke are you using? All that.
Absolutely. So, I mean, if you're just getting into it, you can absolutely get away with an old 870. I think 95% of good waterfowl hunters out there started with a Benelli Nova or a Remington 870. It just seems like everyone's got one in their safe. They all started with that. Or a 12 gauge is ideal, I'd say, if you want to have like an all-around gun for shooting ducks, shooting geese, whatever. You can go shoot your turkey in the spring. For me and my buddies, if we're doing like a little gentleman's duck hunt, if we gotta have a good spot that it's the ducks come in pretty close, and we'll go out there with our over under 20 gauges, just keep it sporty. But that's not our everyday shotgun, you know. We usually shoot. We all shoot Benellis. The semi-auto Super Black Eagles those are our favorite guns. But I mean, it's kind of like a fishing rod. Everyone's got their preference.
Absolutely. So what choke are you using?
For like the last 5 years, I've shot the Pattern Master Code Black Goose choke. I swear by that choke, and it won't ever come out of my gun.
Is it something that you have to pattern like turkey, or you just kind of get used to the way it shoots?
I've never patterned my shotgun, so I have no clue what it looks like on paper. I have no clue what it works like, I have no clue what my pattern looks like, but I know it works. So the Pattern Master, basically it shrinks your shot string down. So instead of having like a 15-foot long shot string, it'll strip the wad so all your pellets are in like a 5-foot shot string. So you get way more pellets on target. It can be frustrating when you first get one because it's a lot easier to miss. But once you get it dialed in and you're comfortable with it, when you don't miss, that duck's not going anywhere, you know?
Oh yeah, I love it. And so when it comes to your shot, some people I've heard they don't hunt with anything except 3.5-inch shells. You got 3-inch shells. Yeah, your 2 3/4. What is it that you use? What did you start with? What do you recommend? And then get into the different types of shot, whether it's tungsten, talk about lead, or all the other types.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm a strong believer that 2 3/4-inch number 2 steel shot in the $9 box of shells from Walmart, the Winchester Experts or whatever, are great shells. I shot those. I worked a part-time job my first year after high school, and me and my buddy both did it. We had no money, and we just hunted every single day of the season. And I was buying boxes of shells with like dollar bills and quarters at Walmart, the 2 3/4, the cheapest steel shot they had, just to go duck hunting. And I killed more birds that year than I've ever killed in my life. And those were the worst shotgun shells I could have shot. So I'm a strong believer that those do the trick. Last year we had a deal with Kent, and they sent us 15 cases of 3.5-inch shells. So I shot those all year, and they kick a lot. I didn't see a huge difference. They're nice for geese. When you have snow geese, I hunt snow geese a lot. When they won't come in past like 50, the 3.5 I think helps a lot. You get some more pellets in there, but I don't think I'm not a believer that you need a 3.5-inch shell ever. So there's guys that argue that, but that's my personal believe.
So are you still sticking with the 2 3/4, or are you at least rocking a 3-inch?
I usually, now that I have a grown up job, I'll shoot the 3-inch shells. That's what I 3-inch 2-shot plain steel. I usually shoot a Federal Blue Box or Kent Fast Steel. Those are the two I like, and I've had nothing but good luck with them. I think I've shot every shotgun shell that's out there, and I've never seen a noticeably enough of a difference to spend $40 on a box of shells instead of 12. But that's just me.
So when it comes to tungsten or steel, you just always lean towards steel?
I always lean towards steel. It's always done what I need it to do, so I don't see a reason to spend 3 times as much on a shotgun shell. I know it has more knockdown power, and I know on paper it is more effective, but for me, I've never needed it, and none of my buddies have ever needed it to be effective. We weren't out there. We're not shooting ducks and watching them fly away. They're still holding up, so I don't see a reason to spend the money for it. That's just me.
Yeah.
I think the choke helps a ton with that, though.
So it's put your money into your choke and then get used to shooting your gun.
100%. I would recommend spending the $100 on a pattern master to anyone that's going to be into waterfowl hunting. I think it makes a huge difference. You'll go from wounding birds to just crumpling them up, and it's a good feeling.
Yeah, watching one actually drop rather than flop or throw some feathers.
Yeah, I'll never forget the first bird I shot with a pattern master. I put my pattern master in, and we went hunting. I had a Drake mallard coming like 15 yards, and I pull up and just pillowcase this thing. And I looked at my buddy. I said, "I'm sold. This thing is sweet."
Man, that's pretty cool. Back. So, talk to us a little bit more about what it's like hunting waterfowl and the adventure that you find within it.
Waterfowl hunting it's a lot different than any other kind of hunting I've ever done. I think it's very rewarding because of how much work goes into it to get a really good hunt put together. I mean, we're talking hours for a weekend hunt. We'll have 3 or 4 buddies. We'll all say, okay, we're going to hunt together this weekend. So, hey, you scout this section all week. You scout this section all week. And we'll drive around after work every day for a couple hours before it gets dark. And, I mean, you're spending a ton of money on gas, and you're driving and driving and driving. And you're just seeing empty fields. And you finally get that phone call from your one buddy. Like, hey, I got it. We're good. And he sends you the picture of a field with a few thousand ducks in it. And you're like, oh, yeah, I can't wait for this weekend. And then just leading up to the weekend, you're just excited and you're checking the field. And then instead of everyone going their separate ways, you're all going to the same field the night before. Like, okay, that's where the ducks want to be right there. We can hide like this. And you figure it all out. And then you go in the next morning and you get your hide perfect. And when that sunlight comes up and the ducks start giving it up and there's no hesitation or anything, you know you're in for a good hunt. It's a really good sense of accomplishment and camaraderie with your buddies, I think, that I don't really get from anything else. It's a different sense of than shooting a big game animal.
Yeah, that was what I was going to ask you just next, was transitioning from waterfowl into big game what's the difference? Where do you see the fulfillment throughout it?
Yeah, it's similar, but it's different. So I just got done with my spring bear hunt, and that was my first bear hunt that I've done. And I drew a tag. It was 7 hours away, and I went over there 4 weekends in a row, and I was like getting my butt kicked. And I'm like, man, this is tough, and I should just stick with waterfowl. But I kept at it. I'm like, I'm killing a bear. And when I finally saw the bear, pulled the trigger, and watched that thing ball up, that was one of the coolest feelings I've ever gotten from hunting. And it was a feeling I'll never forget. That was extremely exciting, but it was completely different than waterfowl. And I can't say that one's better than the other. I think the bear I think because it was so new to me, and I've been waterfowl hunting for so long, and I've shot so many ducks that maybe it was more exciting for me. But it's a lot more physical labor for the big game, I think, versus just the waterfowl is a really big mental thing, because if you can't find birds, you just have to keep driving, have to keep looking, have to keep knocking on doors. And then when you finally get it all, when it all lines up, it's a really good feeling. But it's not like that one trigger pull, okay, I'm tagged out, I'm done. It's like, oh yeah, we just shot into a big flock of ducks. get down. We got more coming,
Yeah, that's one of the interesting things that I've always been drawn towards waterfowl hunting is the fact that you're not just hiking with a gun, you actually get to shoot. And I have guns in my safe that I just love to shoot. You know, before I was a hunter, I was a proponent of the Second Amendment, and I wanted to get out to the range and shoot as much as possible. And so it's fun actually using those weapons for the purpose that they're intended to. So that's one of the things that I think trying to get people into hunting is that if you love shooting or you want to shoot a lot, waterfowl might be the way to go. But yet at the same time, there can be a lot of fulfillment for that one opportunity in which you do take that big game animal and you've waited an entire year, maybe you waited a couple years for it, and it finally happens, and it's just like this big moment of ecstasy where you were like, I'm here, I did it, I'm finally a hunter, I'm not just a hiker carrying a weapon and all that. So is that kind of what you experience?
100%. I mean, that is nail on the head. It's just totally different, and they're both so great.
So do you find yourself leaning more towards big game now that you've taken that bear, or
I mean,
what are you thinking?
I've shot deer in the past, so that wasn't my first like big game animal, but it was my first like, okay, I want to do this. Like, I mean, I've kind of shot deer in the past. Like, okay, I'm gonna shoot a deer. I shot a deer at school. Now I was like, okay, I kind of want to just transition, get more into the big game, learn more about it, rather than just go deer hunting with my buddies, And so I really got into it this year, and when I shot that bear, I can't wait for September, man. I'm ready.
Well, you don't have to wait till September if you want to. Bear opens August 1st if you want to go get it after another one.
Oh, I know it, man. I'll be up there. I promise you that. That was a cool feeling, and I'm definitely more excited about the big game than I ever have been. And I definitely see myself leaning towards that more this year, but I don't see a reason to have to choose, The cool thing with waterfowl is you can hunt him opening up September for early goose for a week, and then you got your opener duck October, usually the second or third week in October, but the hunting doesn't really get good till after Thanksgiving, usually like December. So most of the big game hunts are done by then. So it's really a cool thing to kind of, for guys that are big game hunting and want to transition into it, they can keep their season going longer, which is nice. And my problem has been in the past, I'm so excited about killing ducks that I spend so much time and energy in the early months of the season when I could be out chasing deer or elk and stuff like that, where duck hunting is not that great, but I'm still out there every day,
Yeah.
And it makes it harder once the end of the season. When it really gets good, you kind of get burned out. You're like, okay, I've been hunting nonstop. I'm getting tired.
Yeah, it's kind of like I don't know if any listeners out there ever snowboarded, but when you go to a resort, there's only so many runs that you really end up liking, and then if you go there day after day, weekend after weekend, year after year, you get a little bored of those hills and doing the same runs over and over. Is that kind of what it's like hunting the same fields?
Yeah, absolutely. And it can wear you out, because you're driving around, you see the same fields every day. You drive the same 100-mile loop every single day after work. Okay, where am I going to hunt this weekend? What's the plan here? It's like I'm just looking at the same scenery every single day, knowing maybe I'll find some birds, maybe I won't. It just wears you out.
Yeah. So with big game hunting, there's the golden hour in the morning. You got to get up early, and depending on if you're hiking in or you've already backpacked in or different things like that, you're trying to hunt the early morning, and then you got your late evening. When it comes to waterfowl hunting, what times of day are you hunting?
I hunt first thing in the morning, or I'll hunt in the evening. I'm not an all-day guy. I don't have the patience for it. I can't get myself to sit in the field for 12 hours. But usually the middle of the day, you might kill a few, but it's not worth it for me. I can't sit out there all day. I go too stir crazy.
Yeah. So with animals, big game animals, they're going to bed down in the middle of the day and cool off from the sun and all that. How does it work with ducks? Are they in flight throughout the day, or are they on water, or are they nested up somewhere?
So a lot of times ducks, they roost on water, or they they roost they'll sit in the fields all night and feed, and then they'll go to water first thing in the morning, or vice versa. It kind of depends on the birds you're hunting. So you can hunt them in a field in the morning. Say if they fed at 2 in the morning, and then they go back to the water, and you get all set up, and they're going to come in right at first light, like right at first light. You're going to have a bunch of ducks working your decoys before shooting light, and you can't wait to shoot them. And I've had days where you have a field with a couple thousand ducks in it, and you see all those ducks show up 10 minutes before shooting light, just because the sun came up a little earlier that day, and they come in and they catch a drift what's going on, and they're out of there, and you shoot 2 ducks because you couldn't shoot 10 minutes earlier, And so it's just super hit and miss. With geese, they're a lot more predictable. Ducks will fly around all day, especially if it's bad weather. If it's windy and snowy, if it's snowing, I'll hunt all day, man. If it's snowy and windy, you're going to kill ducks all day. But geese are a lot different. They roost on water every single night, and then they get up maybe half an hour. It depends where you're at, but usually at half an hour or an hour after shooting light, they'll fly off the water to the same field they were at the day before most of the time. They'll eat for a couple hours, and they'll fly back to the water all day, and then they'll come back to eat right before dark, and then when it gets dark, they go back to water for the night.
Okay. So are you trying, let's say sunrise is at 6 or shooting hours is at 6 a.m. What time are you trying to get to a field?
If it's a private field and I know no one else is going to show up, I'm going to get there at 4:30, depending on what I have for a hide. If I got to grass a bunch of layout blinds, maybe get there at 4. If I already have a blind set up on the edge of the field, I'll show up at 5, Just however long it takes me to get set up, everything ready, and then give me 20 minutes before shooting light.
And then do you need to be stealthy going to your blind? Is it all about staying quiet, or what's the process?
No, I mean, we're out there hooting and hollering, headlamps on. If we can, we'll drive the truck out in the middle of the field with the headlights, set the decoys. I mean, they're not there. So there's nothing to scare away.
Okay.
They're coming from somewhere else.
What do you prefer eating, duck or geese?
Ducks taste better, I think. I don't eat a lot of duck by itself. I usually take all my duck and my goose and I mix it all together and I get it made into pepperoni sticks at the end of the year. And that's the easiest way for me to eat it. I can give it to my buddies. They love it. Everyone loves it. So that's the easiest way when you have a ton of it. But if you're going to make some jalapeno poppers or something, duck's a lot better than goose.
Oh, that's good to know. I'll keep that in mind when you take me out and I drop my first bird.
Heck yeah, man. And everyone likes the doggone little teal. They're these tiny little ducks, man. Those things are the best eating ducks there are. Those things taste so dang good.
See, there you go. We're learning something new every day. I love it.
Oh, yeah.
So take us through this. You hear the saying, if it flies, it dies. But when it comes to waterfowl hunting, there's all these different types of birds. So is there any time that you're in an area where all of a sudden you see a bird that you're not actually allowed to shoot? Or what's the process and what you're working through?
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up, actually. Bird identification is a huge thing. You can save yourself a lot of money on the ticket or getting yourself in trouble because so the regs are different. There's a ton of different species of waterfowl. We have a ton of them around here, and they have different rules for everyone. So mallards are going to be your most common bird. You can shoot 7 drake mallards if you want, which is, in my opinion, the perfect limit. But you can only shoot 2 hen mallards. So if it's dark and if it's legal shooting light, but you can't really tell what you're shooting, you're better off not shooting, because if you shoot 3 hens, you just broke the law. You can only kill 2 hens, and then pintails you can only shoot. They changed it. I don't know if it's 2 or 1. It was 2 for a couple years. I think they bumped it down to 1, and I think they might have bumped it back to 2. I'm not positive on that, but pintails, you got to be really careful about that, because if you can only shoot one of them, you can't. A flock of them comes in, you can't. If you shoot one, you got to stop, So
right, you can't just pump into the heart of them.
Right, it's super important to know what you're shooting at, and there's loons and cormorants and mergansers. For someone that's not familiar with waterfowl hunting, you can definitely get yourself into some trouble. I've seen people shoot swans thinking they're snow geese. and
Oh, wow.
I've watched the game warden walk out to them, and I don't think that's a situation anyone wants to be in.
No, definitely not. We always want to be ambassadors for what we're doing and set a good example. So how hard is it to identify birds when they're coming in?
I think
Is this something that takes some practice?
it does take some practice. For me, me and my buddies, I think we've been around them so long that we can see birds way out there and we can know what they are before they get there. We might not know if they're a drake or a hen, but we'll know if it's a widgeon or if it's a pintail. Like, oh, that's a group of divers, you know? So I think it's just, my dad bought me a bird book when I was a little kid. He's like, when we first got into duck hunting, I was like, man, this is awesome. What kind of duck do I shoot? And he's like, well, I'm going to buy you a bird book and you're going to tell me. So he went to Barnes and Nobles or wherever and came home with a little bird identification book. And I love ducks, man. I was a 10-year-old kid. I studied that book nonstop. I knew what every kind of duck we shot was. And I love ducks. I mean, everyone thinks a lot of people just think hunters hate animals, and that couldn't be farther from the truth, you know? And I love birds. I photograph ducks all the time. I've gone out hunting and not even picked up my shotgun. I'll just take pictures. I love ducks.
Yeah, you're squeezing the trigger on a different type of item.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I mean, I like the Benelli better than the Nikon, but sometimes it's fun to just watch them work and take some pictures.
You know, it's funny that you say that people think hunters hate animals. So this last year, I was archery hunting for the very first time in my life, and I just picked up a bow and bought it like 4 or 5 months before the archery season. And I'm out all summer long shooting. I live in a cul-de-sac currently, and the only way I can shoot is put a target in my garage and shoot from the street into my garage. And so a neighbor comes out of their house, and I wave at them, say hello, all that, and they're like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, just practicing my shot." And they're like, "Well, what are you shooting for?" I was like, "Well, I'm going on a elk hunt this fall." And they're like, "Oh, you hunt?" I was like, "Yeah." She was like, "No, I love animals." And I was like, "So do I."
Yeah, we have that in common.
Right. She was like, no, but I really love animals. And I was like, okay, well, enjoy your day. I hope you have a great time. I'll bring you some of my meat if you'd like.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it was a great opportunity to share hunting with people that are unfamiliar with it.
Oh yeah, I grew up in the same kind of neighborhood, and my neighbor, I'd come home and have ducks in my tailgate, be breasting them out, and I mean, at first they were kind of looking at me and my dad like, "What the heck?" And I mean, pretty soon, "Oh, how was hunting this morning? Did you guys get some?" You know, and they warmed up to it. I mean, I think if you're a good steward of the sport, you don't have to worry about it too much. I mean, there's some people that are so strong in their beliefs, you're not going to change their mind, and that's fine. But I think for the most part, it's just I think people don't understand it and they don't know about it, and you can help inform them on that, and it makes it better for everyone.
You know, it's crazy. I consider hunting and fishing the same thing as gardening and growing your own fruits and vegetables. If you are just procuring your own food, and whether or not you just prefer protein over fruits and vegetables, there's really no difference. You're putting in the time and effort, you are getting out of it what you put in, and you're trying to feed your family and yourself at the end of the day.
100%.
So it's so wild. It's how hunting gets put in this box, you know. Fish and turkeys have no souls. I'm not exactly sure where ducks and geese fall into that, but yet if it has 4 legs and fur, you know, you might be the devil if you shoot that or talk about it around the wrong person.
I know it. It's weird, man. That's just it takes all kinds, right?
That's right. Okay, so big game hunting. I shot my elk this year. It was a beautiful 6x6 bull, and I never understood how powerful the law of attraction of antlers are. Because I've never shot a deer or any other antlered animal, and when I shot my elk, and that meat was fantastic, I also looked at those antlers. I was like, wow, these really draw you in.
Oh yeah.
What is it that makes someone want to mount a duck?
I think you just gotta really like ducks. I don't know.
Yeah.
They're. I think that's crazy for non-hunters too. Like you shoot them and then you want to hang. Like what's so cool about a duck? I mean, they're gorgeous. The colors and the different species of ducks is just unreal. I mean, a mallard duck, a drake, probably has 15 different colors, and if you hold it in the sunlight, you're getting different colors of purple and all sorts of crazy colors. And I think they're just beautiful birds. And I mean, I have some mounted in my house, and I love looking at them. I don't know. I think it's not like antlers, but it's kind of the same thing. Like you're proud of what you shot, and if you shoot a really mature bird with really good plumage, and you're like, that's a gorgeous bird. You know, it's kind of cool. You mount it on your wall, and you never forget when you shot that bird. You know.
No, one thing for all the new hunters out there, people who are interested in getting into it, is that it's actually a way to honor the animal. Is in some cultures you die twice. Once when you learn that you are mortal and you're gonna die, but then the second time when your name is no longer spoken. And so to have a mount of an animal or represent the animal with their antlers in your household, their life continues to live.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good way of putting it.
So I love it. So take us through what it is in regards to waterfowl hunting that just makes you want to do it and why everyone should be waterfowl hunters.
I mean, I've spent a ton of time in the outdoors, whether it be fishing or hunting or just playing sports and fishing, crabbing, anything, you know. And I have never seen the sunrises like I've seen when I'm waterfowl hunting. Um, some of the coolest places I've been are from waterfowl hunting. I mean, I've been up into the middle of Saskatchewan, like 4 hours from the closest town. Like, why in the heck would I ever be there if it wasn't for ducks, you know? And
Yeah.
that's pretty cool stuff when you're duck hunting up in Canada and you have a big old bull moose walk through your decoys. You're like, wow, if I didn't duck hunt, I never would have saw that. Or
Yeah.
if you see,
So duck hunting's taking you to some pretty cool places.
absolutely. And I mean, the people I've met through it, I think, are the biggest thing. Some of my absolute best friends, we wouldn't even know each other if it wasn't for waterfowl hunting.
Wow. That's pretty cool. So is it a lot cheaper to hunt out of state for waterfowl versus, big game? It can cost upwards of hundreds of dollars, and after special permits and all these different things, you're into a couple thousand. So how expensive is it to go state to state for
It's
waterfowl?
it's not too bad. I mean, I've usually hunt Oregon every few years, and you go down there. Say you're going down for a weekend, you buy a 3-day license. I mean, you're under $100. You already have your federal duck stamp, which is good for obviously the whole country. And so you're just buying a 3-day small game license and your waterfowl permit. It's usually right around $100. So it's not really breaking the bank to go hunt another state. I think you could get like Oregon. I think you can probably pay somewhere around $300 for the whole season if you're going down there a lot. Say if you lived on the border, you want to hunt Washington and Oregon. It's not like big game hunting. It's more expensive definitely than hunting your own state, but it's not ridiculous. Like you're not paying a couple grand to go hunt ducks.
Yeah, you just brought up two things that sparked in my mind is hunting boundaries. Waterways make up a lot of boundaries, and people will use those for fishing, but also for hunting. How does it go with state regulations for waterways for boundaries, but also for waterways as public access versus it cutting through private land? Have you ever had any experience with that?
I haven't really ever had problems. Usually the water I hunt is going to be out in the bay, the Puget Sound. So if you're in the water, you're in state land. So you can't really be trespassing. There are game reserves. There'll be signs you can't go in the game reserve. You can't go on private property if it's marked, whatever. But if you're out in the bay, I mean, where you're duck hunting, people aren't fishing, from my experience. So I haven't had any problems with that. There's some creeks I'd like to hunt that the creek is public property, but both shores are private. So technically, if you're in a watercraft in the creek, you are legal to hunt it. But if you drop a duck on either side, you're trespassing. So you can't really hunt spots like that. You just have to be real careful and make sure you know where you're hunting because people don't want you hunting on their property if it's marked no trespassing and you didn't go talk to them. So if you get caught on their property, they're probably going to do something about it and you don't want that.
Yeah, does the same law apply for waterfowl as it does for big game, where you are not allowed to waste an animal? So if your animal crosses a boundary onto private land or land that you don't have access to, do you still have to go after and knock on the door? And if they don't let you, then you got to call the Fish and Wildlife to get involved?
I'm really not sure about that. I've had ducks land on private property before. I've gone and knocked on doors. People have usually been cool, like, hey, yeah, go ahead. If you can, I don't like people hunting over here. If you can just kind of try and hunt a little farther away so this doesn't happen again. Like, yeah, no problem, man. Sorry, it was a fluke thing. That's where I've been with it. I've never had someone say, no, you can't go get your duck. Like, because that just,
Yeah.
I mean, what good does that do for anyone?
Right. It doesn't do any good for no one. It's a waste of a life when that happens.
Yeah.
So what has been one of your biggest struggles when it comes to hunting?
Lately, it's been how many people are getting into it and being so everyone butts heads in waterfowl. It's like it's very competitive. There's only so many spots that are good, and the people that are really into it know about them, and then it becomes a big deal on who gets there first or who has permission or no, I know I'm related to this farmer, so I have permission over you. You can't hunt this. He's dated my cousin's brother back in '92, so sorry. Like just the weirdest stuff you'll hear is just it can be very frustrating trying to get on good property. So that's been my biggest struggle with it. That's kind of led me to get more into the big game stuff where I can say, oh, this is a whole giant chunk of public property that no one can tell me I can't be here. I'm going to go until I don't see people anymore, and then I'm good. You don't really have that option as much with duck hunting if you want really good hunts.
Yeah.
You know,
It's nice to get away from it all when it comes to big game hunting. You can get that isolated, solitary self-reflection time.
yeah, you don't get that with duck hunting.
Yeah, well, unless you go out by yourself, but most of the time you're always with buddies, right?
Right. I have a lot more fun hunting with buddies. I mean,
How hard is it to find a mentor for duck hunting or waterfowl?
I think it's harder than it should be. I think a lot of guys that are into it, they all have a chip on their shoulder. And I've been guilty of the same thing in the past. I'll be the first one to say it. It's like I worked my butt off to get all this permission and figure out how to hunt it. Like, why would I take you and teach you? You're just going to come hunt my spots. And I think I've grown out of that. I think that's a childish way of looking at it, but I think that's how a lot of guys are. And if you want to be successful, I think that's almost how you have to be because of how competitive it is and how many people are doing it now. So it's kind of a double-edged sword on that aspect of it.
Yeah. Now I like to bring a different perspective when it comes to mentoring someone into waterfowl hunting. If you say calling is not that big of a deal versus just being in the right spot and concealment, then how can you go about mentoring somebody without actually having to take them to the places in which you're hunting?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't see why anyone shouldn't give someone advice on hunting. If someone wanted to reach out to me and had some questions, I've had people reach out to me on Instagram like, hey man, I'm trying to get into duck hunting. I just moved to this area. I've duck hunted in Carolina, but I just moved up here or whatever. Got any advice? Like, yeah, man, like just go scout. If you already know how to hunt, you're good. Just here's what to look for, kind of give them a step in the right direction. And I don't have any problem helping people like that. And I don't think a lot of guys would. I think for the most part, people are pretty cool in that aspect of it. I know there's some waterfowl shows, like the Oregon Waterfowl Festival is really good one down in St. Helens, Oregon. You can go down there. I think it's usually right around this time of year, and guys will have all their booths set up, and they'll help people call, and they'll do seminars on decoy setup and decoy placement, and I think that aspect of it, there's a decent amount of it, and I think if you look hard enough, especially with like social media, how it is these days, you can find guys that'll help you out. And I think you just gotta, if you want to learn, you gotta apply yourself a little bit and find someone that can get you started.
Yeah, we'll talk about the power of social media. That's how you are a guest here on this podcast. Is that I ran across your account and I was like, hey, this guy is taking really cool pictures of waterfowl and I like it. Let's take a look at what he's doing and what he's all about. And so I reached out and said, hey, You want to talk waterfowl hunting, hunting 101, and here it is will you take me waterfowl hunting?
Yeah, man, it's awesome. I think there's a lot of negatives from social media, but I think there's also a ton of positive stuff that comes from it. And I think if people just focus on that, I think it's a really good tool for hunting and getting people into the sport and helping people understand why people hunt and why we love it and why we get no sleep and spend all our money and spend all our time in the rain. I think,
Yeah.
I think,
Because we love it. We want to live our life, and our life is now. It's not waiting for years down the road for that one moment of, well, maybe someday I'll ask for a promotion or ask for a raise, or maybe I'll ask that girl out sometime, or, when I get around to it. It's like, no, man, every weekend counts, every moment counts. It's about making ourselves better. It's about having purpose, passion, and a drive, and living your life full of love and giving it and sharing it and allowing yourself to be who you are in this world and enjoy your life and enjoy the moment.
absolutely, man. I think it's really cool when you, like, for me, like hunting with my dad and like growing up hunting with my dad, and still it kind of went from him teaching me how to hunt, and I kind of went off the deep end and really got into it. And now it's like, call my dad up, hey, I got to get hunt tomorrow. I'll be there. And he doesn't have to do anything. He just shows up and shoots, and kind of giving it back to him and still getting to spend all that time with him. Like, I see like people that don't hunt and they spend time with their family, but like, I'm truly blessed with how much time I've spent with my dad and the good memories we've made, and all because of hunting, that we would never have that time together if it wasn't for that.
Right. The common bond that's there is stronger than your typical everyday friendship.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. So when it comes to, you've been talking a lot about hunting the Puget Sound and the state of Washington, but yet you have a lot of experience hunting waterfowl all over the place. What is it like hunting east of the Cascades all the way to east of the Rocky Mountains, or waterfowl, wherever it is? Is there any strategies that are different, or is it all going to be the same regardless?
There's definitely different strategies for hunting, but the main principle is the exact same. Scout and scout and scout, find the birds, and then drive some more, because that's all you do is drive until you find exactly where you want to hunt, and then study the birds. You can hang out, glass them with your binos, see how they're feeding, see how they're kind of sitting, see where they're sitting. And then knowing the wind, you always want to set up with the wind at your back if you can. Ideally, if you have the sun in the wind at your back, you're really killing it, because they can't see you and they're just going to come right in. But it's not always perfect, and you have to find ways to work around it. But it's always going to be the same principles. You need to scout, you need to be hidden, and you need to be set up where they want to be. And if you do that, you're going to be successful for sure.
Now explain this. You need the wind at your back. That's something completely different than big game, where you always want the wind in your face.
Right.
Why is it that you want it at your back?
So when they land, they always land into the wind.
Boom. Look at that. That's some major information right there for all of you who are ever going to go set up your first blind.
Yep.
So they always come land into the wind.
Yep. And if you set up with the wind in your face, you're going to be trying to shoot ducks that are flying over your head it's not a great ideal situation.
Yeah, it's last moment. You're going to be moving around a bit, and you're going to probably spook them, huh?
Yeah. Any waterfowler's done it, because you have to do it sometimes, and you make it work, but it's not ideal.
That is fantastic information right there. See, Tommy, I knew I had you on this podcast for a reason.
There you go.
Hey, so talk to us about this. Our strengths can also be our weaknesses. And now that you're getting into big game hunting, but also you've been waterfowl hunting for a long time, what's one of your weaknesses, or what are your weaknesses that inhibit you on your hunts?
I don't have the best patience. When I'm wired like I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but I'm not the most patient guy. So like my buddy Zach, I hunt with all the time. It's a good thing he's my hunting partner, because I'll be like, we'll be out there for an hour. I'm like, dude, it's just not happening today. Let's go get breakfast. He's like, no, come on, give it a little bit. Like, just wait it out. It could get better, and it does sometimes, and it's worth it. And I'm glad I stayed. But that's my biggest weakness is if it's not good right off the bat, I'm like, no, man, we'll try again next time. And
yeah,
I think it's a lot different for guys just getting into it, they're a lot better at it. Me, I've done it a lot, so I'm like, okay, it's not going to be good today. I don't want to waste my time for 2 ducks. Let's go get breakfast, But that's my biggest weakness is patience. I hate waking up in the morning. I do it, but 3 o'clock in the morning kicks my butt every time.
So with patience being one of the weaknesses, how long will you hang out at a blind before you leave?
It really depends on a lot of stuff. So if I'm hunting a public land spot and I'm in a blind and it doesn't go good right first at light, like if there's one spot I hunt that, okay, I know there's a 10 a.m. flight. I'll give it till 11. If they don't fly by 11, I'm out of here. And it just kind of is all situational. If I'm goose hunting and the geese get off the roost and they land in a field next to me, I hop up out of my blind, say, okay, let's go. Because they're not going to jump out of that field and come to my field. They're going to get up out of that field when they're done eating, and they're going to go right back to water. And then they're going to go back to that same field tonight, So I know when it's just not going to happen. And I don't waste my time when I know it's just not going to happen. I don't want to say wasting my time because it's great to be out there, but I'm out there for a reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you have purpose.
Absolutely.
It's you're never wasting time being off the couch and out breathing fresh air and living your life. But when you have a purpose and you're trying to accomplish a mission, you don't want to actually waste your time in regards to that.
Right.
So explain a little bit more about this 10 a.m. flyway. You are so detailed with your birds that you actually know when you can pattern them pretty much?
Yeah, absolutely. For the most part, you kind of just get used to hunting different groups of birds and you see how they act in this area. And a lot of times you'll watch the tides. So say the tide changes at 9:30, it goes from a low tide to a high tide, or the tide's coming in, that'll kick them up off the water, and then they're going to fly for a little bit. And then the tide will level out and they'll go sit on the water. And you kind of learn there's no rhyme or reason to it that no one could write a book and say, hey, this is how a duck acts. It's just from experience and years of hunting the same areas. And you kind of just, okay, well, for the last 5 years, they've flown usually around 10 a.m. Oh, they didn't fly today. Okay. They have in the past. So I'm glad I stuck it out just in case.
Gotcha. That makes total sense. Well, this has been super informative, and I've really gained a lot personally. So whether our listeners out there, you know all about waterfowl hunting or it doesn't even interest you, I hope you got something out of it. This has been a great conversation with you, Tommy, and I really appreciate you coming on. If people have questions or they want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to look you up, or tell us about where we can find you?
Yeah, just shoot me a message on Instagram. I'm pretty good about reading all my DMs on there. I don't spend a ton of time on Facebook, and I like pictures. I'm a picture guy, so Instagram is where if you want to reach me, that's the best way to do it. It's just Tommy Sandoz, one word, no spaces or anything.
I love it. And we'll make sure to put those in the show notes as well for all of you listening. Well, Tommy, thank you so much for coming on, man, and giving your time towards the Soulful Hunter podcast and making sure that we are giving back to the hunting community as much as possible. This has been a great conversation. I really look forward to being able to get out and hunting with you this coming winter.
Heck yeah, man. I appreciate you having me on, and we'll definitely have to go shoot some ducks.
All right. I love it, man. Well, once again, thank you and have a good one.
You too, man. Take care.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, I'd love it if you could go ahead and give this a rating as well as subscribe. Also, you can check us out on Instagram under the Soulful Hunter Podcast. Make sure to tag us in pictures and posts and use the hashtag Soulful Hunter. To find out more about the Soulful Hunter Podcast, go to soulfulhunter.com and be sure to follow the podcast as we are going to be bringing you a lot of great information, insight, and changing lives through primal adventure. I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. Stay tuned and stay soulful.